Recently, I've been meditating on this idea of surrender versus control. And what do we actually have control over? If you're anything like me, you've probably micromanaged your environment and chased certain goals that you think will bring you peace, but they don't end up bringing you long lasting peace. Maybe temporarily you're happy and maybe temporarily you feel fulfilled, but then just the cycle continues and you go on to one thing after another. And this feeling of control was really important. And it feels like if something's out of your control, that's the problem. But in this video, I'm going to explain how surrender, almost unintuitively, is the ultimate form of control. So most of my life, I've been in that cycle I described, just obsessively trying to get things under my control. And there's this kind of Western mindset where it's like everything is in your control, where it's like this grind set, where it's like take accountability for every single thing. And this is really interesting and kind of counterintuitive, but I've come to understand that the thing we need to take accountability for isn't the actions or the events themselves, it's our response to them. And the events are always going to be ever changing. Lots of different things you're going to come across in your life. But it's kind of your ability to let go that determines how much power and how much control you have. So let me give like an example just to illustrate the point. Like, let's say you get into a really bad argument with a family member, for example. And in this argument and in this experience, it's not the control you have over how the argument kind of unfolds that's the important thing that actually ends up giving you peace. It's your ability to let the argument kind of be as it is and not try to change it that gives you the peace. And weirdly enough, and this is really unintuitive, or it was for me at least at the start, when you let things be as they are, they resolve with with least resistance. So usually the reason things keep happening, things that you don't want keep happening to you, is because you're resisting them in some way, which kind of feeds them energetically and causes them to keep repeating in your life. But if you just surrender basically to the event itself, if you let it be exactly as it is, you actually gain the most power, and the event itself resolves in the best way possible for you and for the people around you. And look, this sounds super unintuitive because, like I said, like in the Western mindset, there's this idea that if you let go control, things just won't happen. You'll be lazy. Things will fall into chaos. If you just sit there, if you're not growing, you're dying, essentially. This mindset is like deeply flawed. But the reason we don't intuitively understand this as we are is because of intuition. Intuition is something that a lot of us lack in this day and age. And I have like an analogy that I came up with that I think can illustrate it. So the world and your environment is constantly sending you signals. It's essentially telling you what to do in the best way possible, constantly. Like, think of them as like omens. If you've read like The Alchemist, this book really talks about this. But essentially, the universe is sending you signals constantly. The world around you, even if you don't believe in the universe or mystical stuff, like just think of it as the environment is providing you with inputs that are really useful information, essentially. But the way our minds work in this day and age, when we're just constantly scrolling and we're constantly distracted, our minds are not calm. So think of these inputs or these omens or these signs as kind of light from the universe. And what we do by not having a calm mind, it's like we're in a disco and that light goes off in the disco, but we're in a disco, there's lights everywhere. So we can't really see the signs or navigate or trust our intuition to guide us towards this light, towards this sign. Instead, if we had a calm mind, a still mind, it would be like we're in a dark room. And in that dark room, we see the light, the tiniest light will act as kind of like a beacon. It becomes the most obvious thing in the world. And this has been my experience as I calmed my mind and I looked around. I noticed there were so many signs and things that I just didn't understand before that I could surrender to and let guide me. Like I didn't need to constantly keep clawing and trying to control the things that I was doing. Essentially, the signs were just like, and again, if you haven't experienced this level of calm mind, it can kind of seem kind of airy fairy, a bit woo woo, and it might seem like completely ridiculous. But trust me, like if you go like a week or two without kind of binge watching content and maybe meditating quite a bit, you will be surprised. It's kind of spooky because I was like a skeptic as well before, but it's like, it's so obvious what you need to do at that point. Like you don't, it's almost like you don't even have a choice. You've kind of surrendered to the natural flow that's kind of guiding you. And again, I urge you to try this for like a week or two. Just still your mind and just look out for the signs. And of course, you might be like kind of tricking yourself into thinking they're signs, but I would bet more on the side that you're not, because when you see the things, it's like, oh, what else could this mean? And again, I don't know, it might be delusion, but it's delusion that works in your favor. So it's definitely something to consider. But yeah, again, there's going to be a lot of conditionings that make it kind of terrifying for you. But it's just a really interesting concept. And I've really been meditating on it recently. I've got back into the flow of surrender and I'm really trying to implement these ideas of letting my environment guide me rather than constantly trying to micromanage everything that I do to ensure that I'm the happiest I can be. It's kind of like putting your faith in this kind of universal intelligence that's out there. Your consciousness is so much greater than the contents of your mind. Like your mind is kind of just like a small part of your conscious experience. And there's so much more information and so much more value and so much more wisdom outside of your mind, like outside of what your mind is even capable of. And it's kind of tapping into that source, tapping into that intelligence to help you make daily life choices. And again, it's just this principle of least resistance. Everything in the universe kind of functions with least resistance. And yeah, give it a try, a week or two. You're not going to lose anything. And you might find that you don't need to micromanage, you don't need to control as much. And that happiness kind of comes as a byproduct of surrender, which I've found in my experience to be extremely true. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Hopefully this video helped you in some way, maybe gave you a different perspective or reconfirmed what you already believe. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed and take care.